All right, I'll get started as people are joining. I know you're not here to hear me, you're here to hear Jesse and Lane. So my name is Corinne Waldo. I'm the Senior Director of Economic Vitality at the Boulder Chamber. I want to thank you for joining us for this week's cross-industry session. We've been running these since April 30th, I think, to allow you opportunities to hear updates on metrics, on orders, on anything that has to do with public health. Right now, I know vaccinations is a hot topic. 5-star is a hot topic. All of that will be covered in today's presentation. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. If you have anything else, we'll be pushing stuff out through the chat, so use the Q&A for questions and I'll ask them on your behalf. At this time, Jesse, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Corinne, and don't sell yourself short. People want to hear you too. I'll just jump right in here. So we'll do the epidemiological update, dial status update, and then jump into 5-star and vaccines, and then have plenty of time for Q&A. So as of today, we're down at 69.2 new cases on the 5-day average. So that's a running average where we take the last 5 days and average them together. And as you can see, we're way off the peak from November, and we had that small spike at the beginning of January. And the good news is that there does not appear to have been a New Year's spike. So good news there. This is just another way to look at much the same data, looking at new tests by municipality. And as you can see, again, we're down off that peak, and we're actually, down below where we were at the end of December, which is also great. Key takeaways for this week, really, our case numbers have decreased. They appear to be decreasing across all age groups, and especially good news for our long-term care facilities, where case rates and numbers are falling. And that's as we're ramping up our vaccination for those 70 and older. We do continue to see persistent disparities for Hispanic and Latinx communities, and we are continuing our outreach there. In terms of vaccinations, and these are numbers from earlier this week, so I assume they've gone up at least a little bit. 16,000, almost 17,000 people have gotten at least one shot in Boulder County, and almost 2,500 have gotten the full course of 2 shots of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. And then on an earlier call, I said almost 1/3 of people, which that's sort of stretching numbers here. It's more like a little over a quarter of our 70+ population has received their first shot. So that's really good news. We're making progress. We are continuing to suffer from those shortages in vaccine supply. So dial status, we are at orange. We were put there by the governor, but as of the last couple of days, we've actually seen our 2-week cumulative incidence rate get down below that 350 cases per 100,000. Now we do have to stay there for a significant time. For the dial, we have to stay there for 2 weeks before we, of our own merit, get to say we're in orange as opposed to being placed there. But 332 cases per 100,000, that's really good compared to where we were a couple weeks ago. We were at 500 cases per 100,000. So good progress there, and good trend lines as well. For our positivity rate, we're back at 4.0%, and that's where we were. The last time I remember talking about 4.0% was back before the spike that came from the 18 to 23-year-olds. So that's a huge milestone for us to get back to a number where it's not spreading significantly, at least according to the positivity rate. And then finally, our status in terms of hospitalization, we're at 11 days of decreasing or stable admissions. That's also really good, and a positive sign for us. So, Corinne, sorry to drop this on you. There's a little bit of 5-star right here if you want to talk about it.
Sure, absolutely. Good news is that we submitted our application to CDPHE. The Boulder County Administrative Committee submitted the application yesterday when I pressed the submit button and saw that your application has been submitted. It was a very it was a proud moment because I could come on today's call and not have to tell you that we haven't submitted yet. So we have submitted our application to CDPHE. It is following the same model as Denver, which did get approved last Thursday. So we're hopeful that we'll get approval pretty quickly. At this time, we do also have a landing page. We did submit a press release yesterday that said that we submitted our application. We now have a Boulder County 5-star certification program landing page that I will put into the chat that I also sent out in today's email. It will be the site, the central location where we keep all updates. It will be where we put the application when the application's live. There is an interest form up live right now. And then there's information on how to prepare a little bit for the application and the certification process. This information currently is only in English, but we will, as of Monday, have also a mirroring Spanish site as well. The interest form is in Spanish. All the application forms will be in Spanish, and we will have bilingual inspectors that can go out to facilities as well. So we're working on the actual infrastructure of the program right now, and as our application is in with CDPHE, and so that is the update on 5-star. But right now we're still only accepting interests. When we get verification that we've been accepted by CDPHE, we will start taking applications from businesses. There is a slight application fee. We're working on trying to get some sponsorship dollars in order to cover those businesses that can afford the application fee, because there is a cost to this program that's being covered by a bunch of us that we weren't given resources to do so either. So we'll let you know when this starts, but good news, we did submit our application. So hopefully that's a positive sign as we move forward.
Thanks, Corinne. So I'm just going to jump back into our level orange reminders as we've done the last 3 weeks, really. Remember that most sectors increased to 25% capacity. Retail remains at 50% capacity. That's both critical and non-critical retail. You can operate at 50% capacity. Manufacturing may operate at 25% or 50 people per room. Personal services and limited healthcare, 25% or 25 people per room. And remember, it's whichever is less. So your smaller spaces are going to be less than 25, certainly. Gyms are 25% or 50 people per room, whichever is less. And we can talk about some caveats for that if people have questions. Restaurant, 25% or 50 people per room, 10 people per group outdoors, and on-premises alcohol sales until 10 p.m. under level orange. Indoor events, 25% or 50 people, whichever is less. Use the social distancing calculator to establish what your capacity is. And remember that though this is a field service, open houses for real estate showings follow indoor events guidance. So that's that 25% or 50 people. And then outdoor events, same as indoor events, except up to 75 people instead of 50 people. For sports, at this time, indoor organized sports are not permitted. That the asterisk there is because of the thing I mentioned about with gyms. Some gyms are going to have relationships with high school sports, and high school sports are permitted to continue to, or to season B actually started on the 18th, so Monday, and they can start practicing, and they have different capacity limits. So if they're in a room, no one else can be in that room using that space, and they can have more people in those spaces. Outdoor sports, 10 or fewer on a field, social distancing must be maintained. All participants must wear masks. Obviously the same for indoor sports. All participants must wear masks. Sports and activities overseen by CHASA. This is that point that I made before. Season B starts. I wish I had remembered that I had this slide before I said it before. But yes, your games will start in February. Outbreak guidance has to follow school guidance. So just be aware that there's a little bit of a difference in the way that guidance works or outbreaks work for sports sponsored by CHASA. Small business grant program, I believe I have the date that closes, but it is open right now and will close soon. I believe it's the 29th, which is next Friday it closes. Again, restaurants, bars, caterers, movie theaters, and gyms are eligible. Yep, 129, 5 p.m. on next, not this coming Friday, but the Friday after that. And then for more information, you can go to that coloradoenterprisefund.org website. And really with that, I'm pretty much done. Happy to answer questions. Exposure notification system, please sign up for it. It really helps. The more people that are on it, the better. Our business guidance sessions, we do not have a Friday session this week. And our general session is this time every Thursday. And our Spanish language session does get recorded in advance. It's released on Thursdays. And that's our contact information if you have questions for the COVID business team. And our call center is still going strong, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday to Friday. So happy to take questions.
Okay, well, first off, your cat's getting some love on the chat.
She's
Roosevelt
kind
Eleanor
of a star. Yeah.
Is taking a bath in the background. So you did
Sorry about that.
Roosevelt's getting Roosevelt, right? Roosevelt Eleanor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's getting some love via the chat. So we've seen 4 days of orange, 4 days of being in orange in a row. Have we gotten past the holiday worries of possibly, upticks due to the holidays? Or
yeah, I think that's a pretty inexact science. What we're doing is saying, look at the 2 weeks after an event, or in this case the holidays. Look at for that spike to hit 2 weeks after that, and so we're past that 2 weeks for New Year's. Obviously, past that for the Christmas holidays. So it does look like we avoided the spike. Now, the spike that did occur in early January may have been due to the Christmas holidays. It might have just been due to the fact that people were getting together for just winter, cold, we were fatigued, but that's an example of what we can see, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Given the continuing disparities in the Hispanic and Latinx communities, are you doing anything new to try to address that?
I don't know of any new, recent programs, but I do know that our public health department has been reaching out to specific communities in Longmont and specific communities around the county to try to educate, to try to provide materials and support to those communities so that they're more able to address and discuss this problem. So, and it's really like, how do you talk about COVID-19? How do you talk about the impacts? How do you talk about how to protect yourself? All of that.
And there's the usage of cultural brokers and making sure that the communication is happening within the community. They're also talking about setting up immunization clinics within the communities themselves, as opposed to asking individuals to come to hospitals or other providers. So I know there's a lot of, and then there was a new campaign when I know we had the Step Up Boulder County campaign, which we did do in Spanish as well. We had some Spanish business owners, Spanish-speaking business owners do some really great videos. So we promoted that a lot, as well as there was another frontline worker campaign that was done in Spanish and English that was promoted within the different communities. So we have both campaigns going at the same time. All right.
I'm just gonna also add that there's a whole group that's been set up to look at a lot of the disparity issues within the county, and they're continuing to add to both the racial equity team, and then there's groups that are focused specifically on kind of those other community engagement and resources that are needed. So there's a whole group that's targeting specifically some of those disparity issues.
So we have a bunch of vaccination questions, and Boulder County Public Health just sent out a press release that I'm going to actually send it to the group. And it's about how vaccine supply remains limited and local providers also have signups. So I'll send that information out to the group. But as far as some of the questions, there was an individual that came a little late, but I don't actually think you covered this. And that is, do we know when we're going to move to the below the line on the 1B? So that's the first step.
Yep.
And then I'll ask the second part of the question.
So no, we don't know when we'll move below the line on 1B. I actually just put something in the chat, which I think addresses the second part of that question, but we can talk about it here. But I think, you know, like you said, we are having significant, our capacity is large and our supply is limited. So all of our providers, there was a great call yesterday, and I recommend if you have time, 3:30 on Wednesdays, there's a community update from public health that's sort of to a broader audience and sort of different details, although we talk about a lot of the same things. And they talked about the fact that every provider has the capacity to almost double what they're able to do now, or what they're doing now, but we just aren't getting enough vaccine into the county to be able to distribute it.
And for the person who was late, you mentioned that we have about 27% of our 70 plus have gotten their first round.
Yep.
Those are all above the dotted lines. So it's going to be
a good estimate. Good point. Yeah. Right.
The second part of that question is, below the dotted line is this idea that it's essential manufacturing and DoD contractors. Is it all essential manufacturing, or is it frontline workers within essential manufacturing? And can you clarify that?
I can do my best to clarify it. The link I put in the chat is,
which then I had to put in because you put it in only for Lane and I, so it's going to be from me actually.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. There has not been from the state an announcement, as far as I know, about what frontline means. Two things that we're running on. One, there's a new hotline, CoHelp, that is from CDPHE that you can call with questions about, am I eligible? Is my organization eligible? How would we sign up as an organization if we wanted to do that? Those are all through CDPHE. The frontline designation, as I said, has not been defined, but the way I'm looking at it, the way that I understand it from talking to folks, is that frontline healthcare workers are those that have contact with people who are COVID positive or likely to be COVID positive. So frontline manufacturing is likely people who are doing things that are specifically related to provision for COVID, for combating COVID. So I know that there are a lot of essential businesses, whether they're in manufacturing or whether they're in aerospace or defense, that are asking whether they're frontline because they are providing essential services. From what I understand, all those businesses would likely fall into phase 2, but please contact that CoHelp line. They'll be able to better give you better information than I can.
And one of the strategies that different counties in the state are employing is working with local providers, whether it be like a King Soopers or Safeway or different pharmacies, to designate specific groups going to that provider. So when I send out the press release that just came out from Boulder County, it'll help show a little bit more about what's going, where we are right now, and that is we're still above the dotted line, and we're going to be there for a little while, and also some of the providers that are signing up in our community, and ways you can sign up with local providers as well as Boulder County Public Health. So in the chat is the CoHelp line for information on vaccines. We had a vet clinic and an animal shelter ask where they fall if they're considered frontline essential workers. And I think that's one of those definition questions that needs to be answered.
Definitely.
Let me see if I have any. And the question is, will Boulder County Public Health be utilizing the definition of frontline provided by the CDC? The contact includes both public and coworkers. And I want to clarify, you guys have to follow what the state guidance is. So it's not necessarily your decision. You're very strictly told to follow whatever the state guidance is, which is why you're pushing people to have the state help define some of that.
Yep, exactly so.
So, and that's, it's been very clear that if you don't, then you could lose your access to vaccine if you don't follow the state's guidance and rules. Okay. All right, so we have some questions about recreation centers and pools. So I'm going to go through those first. There's talk that the CDPHE is considering to allow pools to operate with the same operating procedures as CHASA, which would allow user groups to participate indoors now. Have you heard anything about this?
Yes, we've heard that that there has been a variance negotiated between amateur sports groups and the state. However, we are still unclear on details, and my understanding is that it is league-based, so it would have to be an association that sponsors an activity. An example would be, I believe there's a Colorado swimming group that sort of is the association of clubs, non-school related swim teams. They would apply to the state, and then the state would grant them the ability to work with facilities to have those activities. Same for a couple other sports. Now, what the things we're trying to figure out, how would that work? How would we be integrated into that process? Mostly because we're going to be the ones who get the complaints. So we want to know how to interact with that. Other things that come up, how do the facilities, how do they work with that? How do they understand their role in that? And then I think a third question is, our understanding is that it's really only for those season B sports that are permitted under CHASA. So there are going to be a bunch of other sports that want to go indoors. But will they be allowed to have this variance, or will they have to look for a different, or wait a little longer? We don't know any of those details, so we're waiting.
So there's been rumors about something like this for a couple weeks now, and so
Yeah.
we're just waiting for what the final details look like. So I know we get that question each week: is what are you hearing?
Mm-hmm.
And gyms, rec centers put out community equipment like basketballs for all to use if they're just shooting around and not playing a game, socially distanced, just that pickup, just.
So if you can ensure that the group of people playing, first of all, they can't play a sport, so they can't play pickup. So it would have to be, I know that some rec centers have gone so far as to say, okay, a family can rent basically a hoop, and so they can play basketball together as a family. But yeah, you need to be able to clean those basketballs between uses, and have some delay in use between each shift in that. But what you want to avoid is a group of unrelated people gathering, not in the same household, gathering to play a game. That would be a violation of the order as it's written now.
But if they wanted to use common equipment, that common equipment would need to be clean between usage.
Yeah.
Same thing with like a racquetball court or.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So a question about pickleball. It's a non-contact game usually played by seniors. Why is this not allowed? It's usually two individuals on opposite sides of the net or two couples of the same household on opposite sides.
For the same reason that other sports are not allowed, exertion is one of the best ways to spread the particulate, or I'm sorry, the particulate. You're exhaling more of whether that it could be virus, and I think there are a couple reasons. One, so exercise does that too. What you're then doing is putting the onus on the rec center, the gym, whatever facility is providing that use, to know whether you're in the same family, and to regulate whether you are getting too close to each other. So it's sort of two reasons. One, yes, there's a public health reason from the perspective of spreading the virus, and then the other one is just a management and control question.
And still under orange, there's the gathering order of the no more than two households.
Right.
Okay, so let's get through some. So we have a question about what the application fee will be for the 5-star program, and I'll answer that one. It's right now it's going to be for like a singular restaurant, it'll be $100. If it's a larger facility that, for example, is a hotel that has a hotel, a restaurant, and other parts that are going to have separate components that need to be, it might be a sliding scale that would then be $100 per each of those facilities, but it's a $100 application fee at this time. We are taking donations from anybody that wants to contribute to the application fee of others. If you are, then this particular person has multiple restaurants, it'll be $100 per restaurant because we'll have to send out an inspector to each restaurant. So, all right, we're looking at offering children's birthday parties again at the museum. Any thoughts on what category birthday parties would fall under? Is that events?
Yeah, it's a group gathering or an event. Yeah, an indoor event. So you could have up to 25 people. But I would say the hard part there is how are you going to ensure that they're staying 6 feet apart and masked at all times? I don't go to a lot of youth birthday parties, but I've seen them and they don't stay distant.
So you have to follow the indoor event guidance, and then within the indoor event guidance, there is the idea of the numbers based on whether they're seated or not, masking requirements, social distancing and those forth. So you'll follow the indoor event guidance. For live performers, if singers are masked, do they still have to maintain 25 feet distance from the audience?
Yes.
Okay. And then the children's birthday party said, yep, we're going to have to figure that out. So thank you. Thank you for letting us know which category we fall under. So
I definitely agree. Again, having seen the kids around, I'm sure they want to get out and do things. So I appreciate that people are looking to find ways to entertain them.
Yeah. Maybe it's a small family. Who knows? They'll figure it out. That's what they do for a living. So
good.
I have clients who want to come in without a mask once they're vaccinated. What are the guidelines on this?
Nope, not allowed. You have to wear a mask until we're told we can not wear masks. The deal with the vaccine is our vaccines, though they are approved for use, they're not approved for use. They are not approved for use. They have an emergency authorization, and that means that they have not actually been tested to their full extent. We don't know how long the immunity that comes with the vaccine lasts. It may differ for different people. We also don't know whether the vaccine stops you from being a carrier. You may not get the virus. You may be able to fight that off, but your body can still carry and spread the virus while you have no symptoms. So there's a lot that people don't know about the vaccine, or we don't know about the vaccine. So the best thing to do is you've got the vaccine, that's some measure of protection for you, but you do need to continue to wear a mask and socially distance.
Okay. I have a couple questions that came in via email, and then I'll get back to the questions that are in here, because these are about events as well. So the questions are, so for an outdoor maybe June wedding in a backyard or an event, how many people can be at that wedding, and what guidelines do they need to follow?
So for an outdoor wedding, it's outdoor event guidance, 25% capacity, or 75 people, whichever is fewer. So if you're having it in a backyard, the thing to do is use the social distancing calculator to figure out how much space you need. There is the caveat to say, sorry, go ahead, Corinne.
Well, and I just want to make sure that's the reception. There's also the wedding piece falls under the life rights part.
Right, but the life rights is still the same. You have additional capacity if you are. Well, actually, I'm sorry, Corinne. Are you saying that life rights are like
Actual
religious
ceremony
services?
of the wedding? So I want to
Right.
differentiate the ceremony from the reception.
Right. So the ceremony itself falls under a critical service. Is that what you're suggesting, or no? Or are you saying?
I'm just curious if,
Yeah, I don't think there's any difference anymore. I don't think life rights have a difference. What you would, but I will say that a life right, if you can schedule it as a seated event, that would mean that you could have a higher capacity, because then you could have families sitting together, and families would only need to be, and by families I mean households. So households sitting together, and they only need to be 6 feet from other households. Whereas your capacity calculation for a standing event has to imagine each person getting 144 square feet around them.
So outdoor, it's going to be based on your the size of the space, and this is particularly a June wedding, so we don't know what what level we're going to be in at that point. So following the outdoor event guidance, all the details of that, including the capacity, but also the other details that are within the outdoor event guidance.
Right.
So there's a question about, is there talk of ever allow? Oh, go ahead, Lane.
Just going to say, we'll provide the life rights, because I think there is some additional guidance there. So
okay,
make sure to get that too.
Thanks, Lane.
There's a question about, as our facilities are starting to look at, scheduling out things like weddings and events and things, into the summer and fall. Is there talk of ever allowing a dance floor, or is that allowed at higher levels even? Or is there talk of allowing that, and why not?
So I do not know whether a dance floor would be permitted at blue or green, protect our neighbors. The reason why not is that's close contact. You're not controlling the space between individuals and partners, and sometimes the dancing can include exertion, which then droplets of virus can spread that way. That would be our reasoning for not allowing dance floors.
Currently, they're not allowed at any of the levels, and there's a reason for that. And there's really no talk right now of opening it up to dance floors at this time.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so just back to that mask, just a suggestion was made that maybe the mask script could be updated to include the comment, hey, I have the vaccine, I don't need to wear a mask. So maybe that might be a suggestion to the communications team.
Absolutely, I will definitely work on that.
So that's a great suggestion, because that's a new thing that we're experiencing now. All right. Do we have any data on the accuracy and reliability of the exposure notification system? We've heard this person's heard very few people actually get an exposure notification.
Yeah, we have not heard any update on the accuracy question. However, I will say that the accuracy is purely driven by the number of people who use it and actually use it. You can download the exposure notification system, but if you don't say, hey, I tested positive, then it doesn't actually do anything. So I will look into that for next week. I'll see if I can get some information.
And I've actually known 2 people that have gotten the exposure notifications randomly. And it's helped with data on movement of people and understanding people's behaviors. But I do know of 2, and I don't think I've talked to many people. I will note, if you are looking at the 5-star certification program, it is one of the items on there is the promotion employees and customers of signing up for the exposure notification system. And on the website, which I put the link in, are the resources to promote that, both in English and Spanish. So there is a whole toolkit on how to promote the exposure notification system. And that is one of the checklist requirements that the state has put into the 5-star notification system. So just put that out there. Right, let's talk about quarantining. Can you clarify the 10-day quarantine for exposure if someone is tested negative? Can you clarify quarantining first off? And then if someone is tested negative twice during 10 days, can they return back to work?
I can do my best to clarify quarantining. The CDC and the state and the county have made this more complicated. So 14-day quarantine is still the gold standard. We still recommend 14 days. It is the safest way. If you were exposed to someone, if you were a close contact to someone who has the virus, quarantining for 14 days is the safest way to deal with that. If there are now two new options, you can quarantine for 10 days, and if you experience no symptoms during those 10 days, you do not have to get tested. After those 10 days, you can stop quarantining, as long as you've had no symptoms during those 10 days. The 7-day option is more confusing. You have to quarantine for 7 days, and after, I believe, the
Day 5.
day 5, you get tested. Then as soon as you get a negative result, and it's been at least 2 more days, you can leave quarantine. So in the example of the 10-day quarantine where they were in on the 4th, they went into quarantine on the 14th.
And they've had 2
okay.
negative tests.
And they've had 2 negative tests, and they can come back on the 24th or 25th. That is totally fine, as long as they, again, don't have any symptoms after their negative test. The symptoms are the biggest part. Under the 14-day quarantine, we even had we had notes about if you get sick, then, if you get symptoms, that sort of resets your clock. And the way we talk about people who isolate, which is if you have the virus, whether you've tested positive for it or you have symptoms, you're not allowed to leave until 2 days after your you have no fever. So,
and that's 10 days plus 2 days after you have no fever.
Exactly. So the quarantine rules are complicated. Again, we prefer 14 days, but the 10-day does not require a test.
Yeah, I know some of the school districts. So my other son, I have a story that my first son was exposed prior to Thanksgiving, and I just got the call yesterday that my other son was just exposed last week. And they have him in a 10-day no symptom quarantine until this Sunday. So he can't test out of it, but it's the 10-day no symptom quarantine. So I've experienced now both of them going through it. So another question, just curious about any updates on the new variant in Colorado. I know the British one, not the California one.
I don't. First of all, I would say let's not call them by a country because we don't actually know where they started, and it doesn't really matter where they started anyway. But what I do know is the more virulent, which is, I think it's designated as CoV2 1.1.1.7, that's the more virulent one that appeared here in Elbert County first. It is now across the state. I believe last week we had our first Boulder County resident test positive with that. I don't have any updates on the number of people who have it now. It is more virulent. It spreads the same way. It doesn't, it doesn't spread in any different way. And the last thing I heard is that public health experts tend to believe that will be the dominant version by the end of March. So it's going to spread fast and it's going to become the dominant version. And I would also say that there's no evidence yet that the vaccines do not work against it.
The same methods to prevent, the distancing, masking, not commuting in groups, are the same methods that they're suggesting for that variant as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Corinne, I was just going to come back to that life rights question.
Oh, thank you.
And so there isn't a set cap. It is like Jesse talked about. There's the social distancing requirements, so it's based on maintaining at least 6 feet between households. People need to be wearing masks, but there's not a cap on the ceremony. But any sort of party afterwards, reception, is treated as an indoor or outdoor event, respectively, if it's indoor or outdoor, and has to follow all those requirements. So currently that would be a 75-person cap, like following typically the restaurant kind of guidance, it still would not allow for dance floors and dancing and any of that sort of stuff. And performers need to be 25 feet away. So all those other pieces are part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lane.
And then there's a question as to, where you sign up. The question was, a place on the CDPHE website where you sign up to get staff vaccinated.
Yeah,
it was actually the Colorado Helps line, and that's to clarify whether or not you're going to, which level you're going to fall into. And then I'm going to put in the link to the Boulder County sign up form to get notified when your group is up. But first, there's where do I fall? Am I a frontline essential manufacturer, or am I an essential manufacturer that then falls into group 2? So that's where that co-help line was. So I'm going to put into the chat the link to the form from Boulder County.
Yeah, I apologize if that wasn't clear, but yeah, definitely. There's no place to sign up for your company yet. And I know there have been questions about, can we get a provider to come to our facility to vaccinate everyone? I think no, there's not any program for that yet. And second part of that is, I think our vaccine supply shortages put us in a situation where it's even hard to maximize the use of the facilities we have thus far. So having people go on site would be stretching that even more.
Yeah, the challenge, like Jesse said, is we're receiving around 3,000 doses a week, and our 70 plus population is 30,000, and then we have some other essential folks and medical providers that are still need to be vaccinated. So the supply is way too small. We have plenty more capacity to do more vaccinations, but many providers are not even getting anything in a given week. They might get nothing. So that's the challenge, is we're not getting enough vaccine for how many people we need to get through. So it's easy. They are projecting, I think the press release said 7 weeks to get through that 70 and older and in the moderate risk healthcare providers that need to be vaccinated. So we're still a ways off from being able to start moving into the next categories.
Which leads to the next question. Can massage therapists be considered healthcare for vaccination?
Unlikely, but I don't know. It depends on what kind of massage therapy and what kind of setting. This may go back to the limited healthcare versus personal services question, but I definitely recommend calling the co-help line to sort that out.
I've also recommended some massage therapy. Talk to Dora, because I talk to their licensing agency, because there's a good chance they'll be putting out information to the particular licensing. We've had the same thing with a lot of personal services say I have personal contact. I provide services, that could be considered healthcare. Am I in that category? And so I've also suggested reaching out to your licensing authority.
That's a great idea.
Any idea when we'll have data on whether people that are vaccinated can still transmit the virus?
Nope. I mean, I guess what I would say, and I bet Lane knows a lot more about this than I do, in that he actually does public health stuff and has been trained in this, but a vaccine usually takes 4 to 7 years to come to fruition, and they test all of these sorts of details. The speed with which these vaccines were released and the emergency authorization just means that there's just a lot more testing that needs to be done to understand what it does for us.
And then, does anyone know anything about one's susceptibility to the new variant after testing positive for the old variant maybe a couple weeks ago?
As far as we know, that is no different. So I think the important thing to know is, from a structural standpoint, as far as we understand right now, the body recognizes, so the way that a immune system works is it recognizes a form, and that's how it can attack one virus that looks similar to another virus. And so Right now, if I recall correctly, it's either 60, the CDC says that once you've had tested positive and gone through a bout of COVID-19, you have a 60 or 90-day window where you can be pretty confident you're immune. But then your immunity wears off, possibly.
Let me see. Are there any other questions? We don't have any right now, and I'm going to do the last. Boulder County's mask mandate is still for children over 10, yes.
Yes.
Except for, some of the municipalities, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe Louisville has down to 3.
And can a private business require masks for 3 and up?
I don't know that. I would talk to an attorney. I don't know. I don't see why you couldn't. You as
BVSD, the school districts are. They're
Yeah.
requiring it for all
Right.
ages.
So that's a good example. And then I guess what I would say is sort of extending the right that you have to deny access to anyone who doesn't want to wear a mask. You can say, I'm sorry, we need people down to 3 to wear masks.
And we are encouraging it. It's just legally, there was issues around whether we have any enforceability for 10 and under, so that there's not a lot of enforceability from the public health side of enforcing compliance on a 3-year-old. So
In Louisville it is 3. Another question, am I right to assume that those who have had COVID should hold off on getting the vaccine to allow others to get the vaccine?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, Lane, if you know. I would check both the CDPHE website and our website for more details on that.
I think the main piece is anyone who's ill should not be getting vaccinated, but once they've been through and recovered, they don't have lifelong immunity. So that vaccine is still important. So, and obviously if they're in one of these high risk categories, we do want to make sure that those folks get vaccinated.
The 70 plus, the healthcare workers, frontline, that are going to be exposed to particularly COVID patients. Are there any other questions out there? It is 1:48. And again, I'll send information in the press release about the vaccinations and the other areas to sign up through local providers. This isn't for businesses to sign up. These are just local providers that are offering for like 70 plus and some others. The Boulder County website that I put into the chat also has now put all this information on the Boulder County vaccine site. This is the hot topic right now. We are working on potentially a webinar that is for businesses, for their employees to understand the benefits and risks of vaccination. So we're working on that for some time. We can't do it for every business separately. I've gotten a lot of requests for it. So we're looking at how could we do this collectively, because I know that might be a great way to do some education campaigns around vaccination as we get into this. Oh, more questions came in. All right. Did I miss my food establishment license renewal? Can I renew online?
It's a question for Lane.
Lane, you might be able to answer that one.
Yeah,
How may I do that?
There's been a huge challenge that the state presented to us, because there's now a pot of money for those restaurants that were licensed last year. They're getting a free license. So we had to pull out all those facilities out of the renewals separately and then do a whole bunch of accounting work. So from what I understand, those everything should be going out. So the ones that will have to pay, those renewals should get in their hands hopefully again this week. And then the ones that won't have to pay may just have to complete the paperwork to verify their current information, but they will then get their licenses issued. So everything's delayed. There's not going to be any fines for people that for late. Normally we give people a grace period through the month of January, but that will get extended for those that do need to pay. But again, restaurants that were licensed last year are getting a free license. So it's just caused a lot of headache for us to manage that while we're trying to manage all the COVID response. So, but that is coming out, so people don't need to worry about any of that. There's no non-compliance efforts underway for any of that.
I'm glad you're on the call, because Jesse and I would have been able to answer that one. I did send out information about it, but I don't have the technicalities on what was going on there. There's also the sales tax piece that I've also sent out instructions on. And then the last question is, when does the 5-star app open? And this person was late. We just submitted our application to CDPHE yesterday. So upon approval, we'll probably start opening up pre-applications. We don't know when our approval will happen. So I'm going to put in the chat again the landing page that launched yesterday for the 5-star program for Boulder County. It is a great place to prepare and to watch for updates on the applications. So we're hoping that the application will open in the next week or two. But it all depends on when we get our approval from CDPHE. And also, just a reminder that we have to meet the metrics as a county. We are 4 out of 7 days in orange. So we have to meet the metrics to be able to operate the program as it's designed. So any other questions? So someone misplaced their restaurant license from last year and they're trying to apply for a grant with the county and need to show that all licenses are current. Is there a place they need to go, Wayne?
We'll be issuing those 2021 licenses soon, but I don't know that we're going to be able to get them something until those come out. So hopefully that is happening, this week.
And if this is about the grant that's due the 29th of January, you might just have to reach out. If this is about that grant, then, I don't know. Hopefully you get the 2021 one out before then. All right, any other questions? I'm gonna do last call. All right, thank you everybody for joining us. We will see you next week, and be on the lookout for if we do immunization webinar or a 5-star webinar. Those will be outside or separate, maybe even on a Friday. Thinking about turning one of the Fridays into a 5-star, ask questions about it.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
At some points, because we're gonna get a lot of questions about it. So we'll see what happens with the CDPHE application. But in the meantime, I want to thank Jesse and Lane for continuing to have the stamina to do these every week. I appreciate you joining, and we'll see everybody next week. In the meantime, there's the email address, my email address, the call center. Ask your questions and stay healthy and safe, everybody.
Thanks, Corinne. Thanks, Lane. Thanks, everybody. Bye.